It never happens at a good time. The pipe bursts at midnight. The heater quits on the coldest night. Suddenly, you're overwhelmed. That's when HomeServe is here. For $4.99 a month, you're never alone. Just call their 24/7 hotline and a local pro is on the way. Trusted by millions, HomeServe delivers peace of mind when you need it most. For plans starting at just $4.99 a month, go to homeserve.com. That's homeserve.com. Not available everywhere. Most plans range between $4.99 to $11.99 a month your first year. Terms apply on covered repairs.
Welcome to Leading Beyond Limits, the podcast where we explore the extraordinary journeys and insights of remarkable leaders who have pushed the boundaries of what's possible. Your host, Angel Radcliffe, who is a digital transformation leader, author, speaker, and financial educator, will lead each episode and dive deep into the stories, strategies, and philosophies that have empowered these exceptional individuals to lead, inspire, and achieve beyond the ordinary. We're about to embark on a journey of discovery and inspiration, and together, we'll learn what it takes to lead beyond limits. So grab your cape, or at least your favorite coffee mug, because we're about to unravel the extraordinary tales of trailblazers who've turned impossible into I'm possible. Let's get started.
Imagine your top salesperson, the one pulling in maybe 40% of your quarterly revenue.
Right, the absolute rainmaker.
Exactly. Or maybe it's your lead engineer, the person who single-handedly built the entire back end of your flagship product.
Yeah, the irreplaceable genius.
Right. Now, I want you to imagine realizing that keeping them on your payroll is actually the fastest, the most guaranteed way to bankrupt your company's future.
It's the ultimate leadership paradox, really, and it happens every single day.
It absolutely does. And before we really get into the mechanics of why that happens, I just want to say to you listening, I am just so incredibly happy to be back here with you for another deep dive.
Yeah, it's always great to sit down and do this.
It is. There's something just, profoundly grounding about carving out this time. Stepping away from the endless emails and notifications to really sit with one single complex idea.
Completely agree. We all need that space.
And today, the focus we have for you comes from a really fascinating leadership micro scenario.
Right, from leading beyond limits.
Exactly. And this scenario presents a very stark, almost uncomfortable truth in just 6 words. It says, and I'm quoting here, "The brilliant jerk is a liability."
Wow. Which, immediately challenges this deeply ingrained corporate myth we all buy into.
What myth is that?
Well, we are conditioned, almost from day one, to view brilliance as an unquestionable asset. Like, if you're smart and you produce, you're untouchable.
Right. But this scenario goes on to explain that a toxic high performer actually destroys psychological safety.
Yeah, they do.
And ultimately, they'll cost your team way more in turnover and silence than they will ever generate in revenue.
That word silence is so heavy there.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this, because our mission for this deep dive is not to hand you a step-by-step framework.
No, definitely not.
We aren't doing a tactical checklist for how to fire somebody or running through a rigid 10-point HR plan.
Right, that's not what this space is for.
Exactly. Instead, we want to invite you into a calm, reflective space to deeply explore the heavy, almost suffocating emotional and psychological tension that you, or really any leader, faces when confronting this exact scenario.
What's fascinating here is the introduction of unseen metrics.
Unseen metrics. Tell me more about that.
Well, when we think about leadership, we're usually entirely focused on the visible, quantifiable data, right?
Sure. Quotas met, code shipped, deals closed.
Exactly, the tangible stuff. And the brilliant jerk typically excels in those highly visible metrics. They look fantastic on a spreadsheet.
Oh, they're the star of the spreadsheet.
But the scenario points out these hidden, devastating costs that never show up on a quarterly earnings report until it's just far too late.
Right, the turnover and the silence.
Yeah, turnover and silence.
Now, turnover is something I think we inherently understand,
That's pretty straightforward.
People quit, HR conducts an exit interview, and then you have to spend actual capital to hire a replacement. That is highly measurable.
Right, it has a clear dollar amount attached to it.
But silence, that is a really heavy, very abstract word to use in a business context. How does silence bankrupt a company?
Well, it is arguably the most expensive metric a company can have, precisely because it is invisible.
Okay, how so?
Silence in a team setting means stifled innovation. It means, let's say someone spots a critical flaw in a project plan.
Okay, like a junior analyst or something.
Yeah, exactly. A junior analyst notices like a 5% discrepancy in a financial model, but they don't say anything.
Because they're terrified of the jerk.
Exactly. They know the genius who built the model will just publicly mock them for questioning it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've been in meetings like that.
We all have.
Okay.
So that 5% discrepancy just sits there, it's hidden, and it compounds over 2 or 3 years until it becomes a multi-million-dollar write-off.
That makes so much sense. It really brings an analogy to mind that I want to test out on you.
Oh, please, go for it.
Keeping this kind of person on your team, it's like driving a highly tuned, high-performance sports car.
Okay, I like where this is going.
But the engine of this sports car constantly leaks toxic exhaust directly into the cabin.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So sure, you are hitting top speed. You're flying down the highway, generating all this revenue. But the passengers, your team, they're slowly suffocating.
That is an incredibly precise way to visualize it.
Right, like the turnover and the silence are the passengers passing out from the fumes.
Exactly. You're trading the operational health and intelligence of the entire vehicle for the raw speed of one engine part.
Yeah.
When psychological safety is broken, people just stop bringing their full cognitive capacity to work. Actually, there's a clinical term for this.
Oh, really? What is it?
It's called threat rigidity.
Threat rigidity. Okay, unpack that for me.
Yeah, so when the human brain encounters a chronic social threat, like a volatile, toxic peer who might humiliate them at any moment, the brain literally constricts.
Wait, physically?
Well, neurologically, yes. It shifts resources away from the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that handles creative problem solving and collaboration.
Okay.
And it moves all that energy into pure survival mode. The team essentially shrinks.
Wow. So they aren't just being quiet to be polite. Their brains are literally shutting down the creative centers to protect themselves.
Exactly. They withhold their best ideas, their constructive pushback, their early warnings about market shifts. So the silence you hear, that's the actual sound of your team's collective potential being drained away.
Man.
Yeah.
That's intense. But this brings us to the core tension, right?
Right.
Because if we all agree that the passengers in the car are suffocating, if the ultimate cost so clearly outweighs the revenue, why do leaders freeze?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because we see this happen all the time. Leaders will tolerate this behavior for years. And, if you ask a leader in confidence, they don't lack information. They know the person is toxic.
They absolutely know. They usually have a whole file of HR complaints to prove it.
Right. So why do they just sit on their hands?
The hesitation almost always stems from a deeply human, deeply uncomfortable relationship with risk and immediate visibility.
I really want to talk about that visibility piece because here's where it gets really interesting. And I want to push back on the premise just a little bit here.
Sure, push back.
It is very easy for us to sit here, comfortably in a studio and say, oh, just fire the jerk, save the culture.
Right. It's easy in theory.
But let's put ourselves in the CEO's chair for a minute. Let's say
Excellent.
it's November. You have a massive Q4 revenue target to hit.
Okay, the pressure is on.
Exactly. And what if that brilliant jerk holds the literal patent to your core product? Or, I don't know, they personally own the relationship with your biggest enterprise client.
Very common scenario.
Right. So are you seriously telling a founder to risk insolvency today, to risk missing payroll next week, just for the vague promise of cultural health tomorrow?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Really? Even with payroll on the line?
Yes. And here is the structural mechanism behind why I say that. If one person holds the patent, or they control the entire client relationship, and they use that leverage to act like a tyrant,
Yeah.
you aren't actually running a company anymore. You are managing a hostage situation.
Oh, wow. A hostage situation. That's a brutal way to put it.
It is brutal, but it's the reality.
But it makes complete sense. I mean, you are entirely at their mercy.
Exactly. The leader looks at the landscape and thinks, if I lose this person, the whole project goes under.
Right. It's panic.
So what they do is they disguise their own self-preservation, their very real fear of missing that Q4 target as business prudence.
They spin it to themselves.
They do. They tell themselves, I'm protecting the company by keeping this person around.
I'm doing the hard thing for the good of the team.
Exactly. But in reality, they are choosing a guaranteed slow decline in organizational capacity over a sudden, sharp, visible drop in performance.
Yes, because of the visibility.
Precise.
Think about it. Right now, if the team is miserable, the brilliant jerk is the villain.
Right. The anger is directed at the jerk.
The misery is distributed across the whole team. But the moment the leader fires that top earner and the numbers inevitably dip in January.
Suddenly, the leader is the villain.
Exactly. The leader is the one who has to stand up in front of the board or the investors and own that dip.
And that is terrifying. You step directly into the spotlight of isolated accountability.
Isolated accountability, that's a great phrase.
Yeah, because you are no longer just managing a difficult situation that everyone knows about. You have actively initiated a crisis.
You pulled the pin on the grenade.
Right. If the numbers drop, there is only one person to blame. You. You are completely exposed.
Wow.
So the hesitation to remove the brilliant jerk is almost never about the toxic person themselves. It is about the leader's internal terror of holding that level of isolated accountability.
So they rationalize. They say, we just need them to get through this one product launch.
Sure, we just need them until the end of the fiscal year.
Right. It's always a moving target. Just one more quarter.
Precisely. They convince themselves that the genius is the central load-bearing wall of the entire organization.
But they're not. They're just a really shiny brick.
Exactly. And in doing so, the leader waits for a guarantee that will never, ever arrive.
A guarantee? What do you mean?
They wait for a magical moment where removing the toxic person will somehow be painless, completely seamless, and entirely risk-free.
Right, which is impossible.
Totally impossible.
But that phantom guarantee isn't just like hurting the timeline. It's actively changing the leader's psychology.
Yes, it is.
Because the longer they wait, the more they sit there and observe the toxicity and do absolutely nothing, the more they actually lose trust in their own judgment.
That is a critical point, the erosion of self-trust.
Right, which brings us to a real crisis for the person in charge. How does a leader rebuild their own self-trust when they've been consciously compromising it for months or even years?
It is incredibly difficult.
Because how do you make a decisive move when certainty is fundamentally incomplete? Firing your rainmaker without a safety net? I mean, that feels like stepping off a ledge in the pitch dark.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to look at the closing questions the scenario poses to the reader.
Okay, yeah. What do they ask?
The scenario asks, have you ever had to let a top performer go to save the culture? Did the team's performance improve or decline afterward?
Those are heavy questions to sit with.
They are, and the profound truth embedded in those questions is that no one knows the answer before they make the decision.
You can't run a simulation on it.
No.
You can't, like, A/B test firing your lead engineer. Let's see how Tuesday goes without Dave.
Exactly, you can't.
Yeah.
Leadership decisions of this magnitude are almost always made in the fog. You only ever have partial clarity.
Right.
You have the hard data on a spreadsheet that screams, this person brings in 40% of our money.
Which is loud. That data is very loud.
Incredibly loud. And then on the other hand, you have the intuition, the quiet observation, the subtle cues that tell you they are actively destroying the operational capacity of everyone else in the room.
So what do you rely on when the data and your intuition are at war?
Moving forward responsibly in that exact moment does not rely on acquiring a perfect data set. It relies entirely on a leader's internal judgment, their presence in the reality of the situation, and fundamentally, their self-trust.
Self-trust, man, that is such a quiet but honestly terrifying concept for a lot of people.
It is because it requires vulnerability.
Right, because trusting yourself means accepting that you might be wrong. And it means accepting that you might cause acute short-term pain for everyone.
Yes.
Making a move that you know will definitively hurt your metrics today, all for the unseen promise of viability tomorrow.
Yeah.
That takes a very specific kind of fortitude.
It really does.
It feels like this is the very definition of the burden of leadership. It's holding the tension of the unknown without rushing to a panic solution, but also without retreating to the safety of just doing nothing.
It is the defining burden. Think about it this way. Management is organizing known variables.
Okay, yeah.
You manage a supply chain. You manage a quarterly budget.
Because those things are mostly predictable.
Exactly. But leadership is navigating the unknown with a profound sense of responsibility toward the people you are guiding.
That distinction is so important. Management versus leadership.
Right. When you rely on self-trust to remove the brilliant jerk, You are essentially saying, I trust my judgment that a healthy, highly functional team is ultimately more capable of solving complex problems than a broken team that is just orbiting one superstar.
Yeah.
And more importantly, I trust my ability to navigate the fallout, whatever it may be.
That is powerful. I trust my ability to navigate the fallout. But let's talk about the fallout of the alternative. Because if you lack that self-trust, you avoid the decision entirely.
Which happens a lot.
A lot. But as we know, avoiding the decision is still a decision.
Absolutely.
It sends a message. And this brings us right back to that invisible metric we talked about earlier, silence.
Right.
If you keep the jerk, you aren't just like maintaining the status quo. You are actively altering the behavioral economics of your entire organization.
This raises an important question, and it speaks directly to the final warning in the scenario.
Okay.
The text states, if you allow brilliance to excuse bad behavior, you are signaling to your entire team that results matter more than respect.
Oof.
We really have to ask ourselves what happens to the silent majority of the team when they receive this exact signal.
Well, I think they realize the rules don't apply to everyone.
Exactly.
They walk through the lobby, they look at those core values printed on the wall, integrity, collaboration, respect, and they realize it's just marketing copy.
It becomes a joke to them.
Yeah.
By choosing inaction, by avoiding the deep discomfort of firing the brilliant jerk, a leader is actively endorsing the toxicity.
They're co-signing it.
They are. They are looking at every single person on that team and telling them, your psychological safety, your ability to speak up without fear of public humiliation, and your basic dignity. Those things are worth less to me than the revenue this person brings in.
Wow. And once that message is received by a team, the damage is essentially permanent, isn't it?
It's very, very hard to undo.
Like even if that toxic person eventually leaves of their own accord 3 years later, the team will always remember what the leader was willing to tolerate.
Exactly.
They will always remember who the leader chose to protect.
Yes. That is a permanent fracture in the culture. The trust between the leader and the team is just broken.
Right.
The team learns a really hard lesson.
Yeah.
The system rewards brilliant cruelty, and it punishes quiet competence.
Brilliant cruelty over quiet competence.
So those quiet, competent people, the ones who actually keep the lights on and make the organization run day to day, they either leave.
There's your turnover.
Right. Or, honestly, worse, they stay. And they just give you the absolute bare minimum required to not get fired. They become completely disengaged.
Which is the silence.
That's the silence.
So what does this all mean? When we look at everything we've just talked about, it means we are looking at a massive paradox.
We are.
By trying to protect the guaranteed short-term results generated by this one brilliant jerk, the leader is actually putting a hard cap on the team's ultimate potential.
A very low cap, yes.
They are trading the collective genius of the entire group. You know, the collaboration, the shared ideas, the cross-pollination of different perspectives. They're trading all of that for the fragile ego of one single person.
Beautifully said.
They are settling for a fraction of what the team could be, all out of a very human fear of the unknown.
And that is precisely why the scenario labels the brilliant jerk a liability.
Right, going back to that word, liability.
Think about it in strict financial terms. A liability is a future obligation or debt that drains your resources.
Okay.
The revenue this person brings in today is entirely offset by the massive cultural debt you are accumulating behind the scenes.
The invisible debt.
Exactly. A debt you will inevitably have to pay tomorrow through recruitment costs, lost institutional knowledge, and completely missed market opportunities.
Because nobody was brave enough to point out the flaws.
Exactly.
It really is a heavy realization. We set out today to deeply explore the emotional weight of incomplete certainty, and I think we've seen just how incredibly heavy that tension can be.
It's not something you can just resolve with a quick meeting.
No. It takes an immense amount of courage to prioritize long-term organizational respect over guaranteed short-term results.
It does.
It requires a leader to sit with extreme discomfort, to willingly step into that terrifying spotlight of isolated accountability.
Right.
And to really trust their own judgment when the spreadsheets and maybe even the board members are actively telling them to just look the other way and take the money. It is not an easy path.
No, it isn't. And, that tension does not magically vanish the moment the decision is made.
Right. It's not a movie where the villain is defeated and suddenly everyone cheers and the credits roll.
No, definitely not.
The real work actually begins after the decision.
Precisely. Because if you finally find the self-trust to remove the brilliant jerk, you still have to face the aftermath.
Yeah.
Are you, as a leader, prepared to step into the quiet, fragile space they leave behind?
That's a great question.
And are you prepared to do the slow, painstaking, often really frustrating work of teaching a silenced, traumatized team how to safely speak up again?
Wow. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the scenario. We promised at the start that we aren't going to give you a tidy wrap-up today, and we're sticking to that. We are just going to leave you to sit quietly with the tension of that final question. Until next time.
Thank you for tuning into another inspiring episode of Leading Beyond Limits. If you enjoyed today's conversation and want to hear more from our incredible guests, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us. And if you have a remarkable leader in mind who you'd like to hear on our show or any questions and comments, feel free to reach out to us. You can find our contact information in the show notes. Remember, leadership knows no bounds, and with the right insights and determination, you too can lead beyond limits. Until next time, keep reaching for the stars and leading with purpose.